Welcome to Talkin' Maine with the Bow Tie Boy. Yes, today I remembered to wear my bow tie. I'd like to welcome Drew. Drew, welcome to the show. Drew, who are you? Tell us who you are, a little bit of your background, then we'll talk a little bit about the American Legion.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me on this morning, Tom. Really appreciate it. I'm Drew Goodridge, and I am a Maine native who grew up in Pittsfield. I'm a UMF graduate. I actually have a daughter who's a legacy student who graduated about a year and a half ago. After graduating UMF, I kind of moved out of the state of Maine, pursued a career in federal law enforcement, and I retired from the Naval Criminal Investigative Service in 2019 and returned back home to Maine so I could be closer with my parents and who live in Wilton, and my wife's parents are Farmington natives. So just kind of making my way in retirement, and became a part of the American Legion here in Farmington.
So you had service time.
I did. I am a U.S. Army veteran. I was signed up when I was 17. My parents signed the papers, and it was mutually beneficial for the U.S. Army and myself. It definitely helped pay my way through UMF, the GI Bill at that time, Montgomery GI Bill. So I served for 6 years and was discharged honorably as a sergeant. I was a military policeman at the Bridgeton unit, and then an infantry sergeant at the Dexter unit.
Wow, so you're in the
reserve, U.S. Army Reserve.
Yep. Yeah. So at one point, I almost ended up in the Army Reserves in Bangor in the infantry unit.
Okay.
I came home from my commissioning in the Corps of Engineers, and they assigned me to that group. And I went there, and they were very upset that I was there because I was supposed to be the XO, but they already had somebody in the pipeline they were training to be the XO. He was an officer, OCS.
Okay.
So I tried to go into the Corps, the Guard Corps, and they were full right up. So I ended up retiring quickly. So. But welcome, and thanks for your service. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
As we get ready to talk about the American Legion, I'll share a little story with you. My dad was a merchant marine. As a merchant marine in World War II, they had the highest casualty rate of all the various services out there. I think it was 25% were killed because they were undefended, bringing these merchant ships over with things. My father actually went into Murmansk on the North Atlantic on one of his trips. And I have a 1944 calendar at home that is signed by all the people from Murmansk thanking him for coming up there. And what I read around that trip is about 25% of those ships were sunk. Well, my dad was a veteran. If you recall, in World War II, they did not consider them veterans until about 25 years ago.
That's right.
And I remember my dad calling up, crying on the phone. Now, my father was a stoic Italian. And I'm said, Dad, what's the matter? He said, I'm a veteran. I'm finally a veteran. I can remember going to Memorial Day parades, and his brother who was in Normandy and his other brother who was in North Africa walking in the parade with the veterans. And I look at him, but Dad, you were there. I'm not a veteran. So he's now buried in the Veterans Cemetery. He died at 86, but at 85, he was still selling poppies on the corner. He was so proud that he was a veteran that he made sure that he was doing that. So, you know, my connection is through that. He was in Texas, and so when I talked to him on Memorial Day, gotta go sell those poppies. Okay, Dad. But tell us a little bit what is the American Legion? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, the American Legion is really America's largest veterans service organization, and it's really a powerful advocate for active military veterans, families. There's a lot that the American Legion has accomplished over its 104-year, history. It's actually chartered by Congress, although it's a nonpartisan organization. So when you take the membership, which right now currently is close to 2 million, that's a powerful voice to bring to Congress to advocate for veterans benefits. And, probably some of the more common benefits that many people are aware of would be the GI Bill for the World War II soldiers that came home that really provided an opportunity for free schooling, and I'm quite certain it had an impact here in Farmington as Farmington veterans returned home to help, start their lives, be, business people, go to school, build their communities, up to recent legislation from just a year or so ago, which is the PACT Act, which really is the full name is the Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson honoring our promise to address comprehensive toxins. So that's really the largest expansion of VA benefits for veterans. It really opens up benefits to about 7 million more veterans who've been exposed to toxins, whether it was Agent Orange in Vietnam, all the way to those who served in the Gulf War, burn pits. So, which I had as an NCIS agent, I was assigned in Kuwait as part of the Iraq conflict, working my job there. And we were living next to a burn pit, along with military personnel and contractors. And if you've never smelled a burn pit, it is the most foulest thing that
What were they burning? That plastic or
pretty much everything, but a lot of it was raw sewage and other things like that, and using jet fuel to keep it burning. So just a horrific smell with the smoke and the toxins.
So 104 years, that puts us right after World War One. The American Legion was started.
Yes, it absolutely does. So the American Legion really was born from an idea of about 4 lieutenant colonels who were. So the war had ended, but our service folks were waiting pretty much in Europe and France for transport back home because it was all by ship then.
Right.
And so they recognized that there was becoming a morale issue waiting for transport home. And they were also thinking about there are no benefits for these veterans who survived horrific conditions with trench warfare, chemical gassing. I mean, you've got soldiers who are maimed, limbless, exposed to all these horrors. But what they were getting when they got home was a $60 stipend and a train ticket to their closest train station to their home. So they felt, these officers felt that they could do better, and probably one of the more prominent names would be Teddy Roosevelt Jr. He was one of those lieutenant colonels who really was the impetus to the formation of the American Legion. And they actually held a caucus, their first kind of caucus in Paris, to put the basically the framework of the organization together. And then once they returned to the States, it met before Congress, got a congressional charter. And then by the end of 1919, the American Legion membership was about 700,000. So you look at 700,000 veterans across our country, and plus posts are being populated across the nation. That's a powerful voice that Congress would listen to.
And it was good because they were exposed to horrible things in World War One. I mean, a friend of mine has one of the shotguns that we used to carry that was automatic, because we'd go down the trenches and your shotgun would shoot 5 shots and you'd fall to the side and the next guy would come up. The Germans actually took us to the Geneva Convention complaining that it was unfair in the warfare, but it was the only way we could protect us. But at the same time, they're dumping mustard gas.
Absolutely.
As on top of us, but I guess that was okay. Now, we have a post here in Farmington. How do you know how it got started and how it got its name?
I know I've been doing a lot of research since I became a post member. I have a degree in history from UMF, so it's kind of a passion of mine. And we have a number of archives that are like stashed away up in the attic. So I started rummaging through those.
I may have to go rummage through them.
Absolutely. You're welcome anytime. And I got to really get it organized. So when our veterans returned back from World War I in 1919. There was a Colonel Robert White received a letter, I believe from what was the state commander at the time of the American Legion, saying, "Hey, we would really like to see if you're interested in putting a post together." And so in July of 1919, Mr. White was able to gather about 50 veterans from the surrounding area, and it wasn't all within Farmington themselves. And so they met with representatives from the state American Legion that was just also forming at the time.
Right.
And they were able to put a decision together that they did want to form a post. And in order to charter a post within the American Legion, you need to have 15 veterans sign that charter, that application for charter. So they were actually put that together. It got sent off to the state and then on to national. And then shortly thereafter, their charter was approved. And then it's my understanding that that American Legion post in its early formation was meeting at the Grand Army of the Republic Hall. But also at the same time, they voted to name their post after the only Farmington casualty of World War I, which was Lieutenant Thaddeus Roderick. He succumbed to wounds that he received, and he actually died in France. But then, later his body was transported back, and he's buried at Riverside Cemetery here in Farmington. And we, along with our second namesake, who was Corporal George Crosby. He was a casualty of World War II, the first Farmington casualty of World War II. He died in the Battle of in the Solomon Islands, the Battle of Guadalcanal. And so now our post is Roderick Crosby, post 28.
And I think one of them is related to Lance Harville. Lance used to be our representative for the area. And I can remember one Memorial Day speech, one of the two, and I can't remember, somehow it's Crosby that he was related to, but told a story about him and his family back here. But that's interesting because Wilton used to have a post at one time.
It does. Well, it did, and
yeah.
still on paper, there are a few vets that are part of that post, but it is an inactive post. So we do have in our post, we have residents of Wilton, Fayette, like myself, in the surrounding Farmington area. And then we are part of what is known as District 4, and so within the American Legion Department of Maine, the districts are broken down by county. Aroostook is broken into 2 districts because of the expanse of the geography. So we have Kingfield, Strong, Phillips, Wilton on paper, and Farmington.
And see, I think when I originally joined was the Wilton group, and then as they declined and disbanded, I came over here to Farmington to post 28.
And we appreciate your membership.
Yeah,
Thank you very
well,
much.
it's a good group of guys. I mean, it all is. I mean, I finally got to go to a meeting because on Tuesday nights I used to have selectmen all the time. Couldn't go. So we see the posts around Christmas, not Christmas time. Well, certainly we do because we always have the color guard. That's always our color guard. This year I had the opportunity to bring home and bury a World War II veteran that had been found on Operation Tidal Wave in Romania. And I asked Steve and the crew if they would come up and be the color guard, which they gratefully did. And they opened the ceremony and they closed the ceremony. We see them all the time.
Yes, our color guard is probably our most publicly visible component of our post. And I think in a lot of posts that have color guards or honor guards that perform military funeral honors, that's probably really where our community at large will see the American Legion. And we do support our post, supports public observances for Memorial Day, for Veterans Day, 4th of July parade. They lead the Chester Greenwood Parade Day, and last year it was very rainy, but they were out in front and center, at the start of that parade. And the return of Sergeant Zellwood Graveland last year, I was part of that ceremony, and it was such I would say an honor to be a part of that, so that family could have closure for that for the return of their loved one, because not everybody returns home.
Yeah.
And we were just
that was my second one. I actually had a Vietnam pilot that came home from Rangeley, and I got called, and the family had moved out of town, so they got in touch with me. So we buried his remains in the Rangeley Cemetery, and it was packed. The kids lined the streets. But with Zellwood, I knew that Sue White for a long time, and she told me about Zellwood. And one day she calls up all excited they had found him. And that was, to me, it was a unique, unbelievable experience. The group that he was part of is actually going to do a flyover in the Phillips Old Home Days parade to start the parade. They were supposed to fly over that day, but they're not going to. They couldn't that day because, if you might recall, it poured rain until we went to the cemetery, and then the sun came out.
Yes.
So they canceled it, but they have agreed to come back and do the start of the parade. So I'm hoping at 5 o'clock we're going to have some kind of B-52 or something flying over the top of that. The Post does a bunch of activities in town, and to raise money to support us. What are some of those things?
Well, some of the things that we do, we really try to tie our post to servicing the community, because I see us as a veteran service organization, but I also see us as a civic organization as well. And really, the lifeblood for a post is its being a strong part of the community. So for an event that we have coming up here in May, for example, we're hosting a chicken barbecue, and we're raising money to send juniors to what we call Dirigo State, which is run by the Department of Maine, and some may recall Boy State and Girl State. So the Department of Maine, a couple of years ago, had an idea, because both programs are excellent programs, but they really weren't sharing the same curriculum. And they really wanted to have a diverse group of students come in and actually experience what Maine legislation is like. So they combined the two programs, and it was supposed to kick off in 2021, but the COVID pandemic put a pause on that. So last year was the first year of the official first year for Dirigo State, and it had about 150 high school juniors from across the state of Maine being a part of having mock elections, running mock legislative processes. They also have some fun days. I believe the National Guard came in last year and ran an obstacle course for them. And then, of course, they have guest speakers like Governor Mills and local politicians come in where they can do Q&A, questions and answers, and things like that. And then there's a formal graduation at the end of the week. So this year, it will be held at Colby College from June 18th to the 22nd. So we are raising money so that we could send 2 Mount Blue high school students to that program.
And Steve Bunker called into my radio show to talk a little bit about that, and we'll continue to remind people of that every year that we do that. But I was so used to Boys State, and I didn't click till you just explained the difference between the two. My son went to Boys State. When I was in high school, to go to Boys State was a competitive, everybody had to apply, they interviewed you, and then I didn't get it. Some other kids went to go. They didn't have a broad thing. When my son went, 13 boys, young men from Farmington went, or from the Sad Nine, went to Boys State. And we actually elected the governor, James Cody, who still lives here in town. Works very hard in the legislature doing a whole bunch of different things, but James was elected as the governor. My son wanted to be his protection, but no, you have to do something else. So, and Girl State, I used to go up and speak to them. And one of the I did it for 4 years. My co-speakers were this Janet Mills lady and the Susan Collins lady.
Okay.
They would kind of speak before me, but I used to get them at the end. And what was most fun, and I don't know whether you still do this, is that I was told to speak about 20 minutes, and then the next 20 minutes were questions from the floor. And the girls would line up, and I'm telling you, they asked me some zingers. It was really interesting going through that. And then that time flew, and that was the part I looked forward to the most. Not my speech, but listening to what their questions were. And they really, so what do you think of this? What do you think of that? And it was like it made you use your brain. So it's great to see that it's come together like that.
Yeah, these students are obviously, as you know, future leaders of our country. So this is just one of those programs that for the American Legion, was formed, Boys State was formed in 1935 and then quickly spread across the country. And so you had former President Bill Clinton was a Boys State graduate. Lou Dobbs, co-founder of CNN, Boys State graduate. You have all these major media figures, political figures that Boys State was really imparted, and made quite an impression on them. And so Girl State, I should say, is an American Legion auxiliary program. And so for us here at Post 28, we have a very strong American Auxiliary Legion unit, 24,
yes, so.
28, I'm sorry. And they very much are partners here in our post.
That is true. Without them, the post wouldn't exist.
Oh, we joke about that.
But it's true.
But absolutely, they are as very active as the Legion members themselves.
They really
it's a great partnership.
They really are. It's interesting. My brother went to Boys State, though he made the cut, and he ultimately went to the Naval Academy. He graduated from there in '73. So it did instill him, but he's not in politics. I didn't go to Boys State, but I ended up being the one in the political side of the road. But I had no intention of doing that until, long story, that's another story itself. But it's a great program because I know the kids actually work on legislation. First they did campaigns for who wanted to be in the certain offices. Yes. So you have the 2 guys or 3 people that ran for governor, which will be interesting as a co-ed group how that works out. They run their campaign, the governor's elected, and then they filter down and elect the rest of the people, the senators, the senators, the legislators themselves, the House representatives, and then they caucus over bills. And then they actually have testimony around the bills. Now, if I recalled right, Boys State was much more liberal on what you could have as bills are concerned. Girl State, they were given like 3 or 4 choices, that's all they could do. And so the boys had a good time. The girls are kind of like, my daughter came out, that was fun, but Dad, it wasn't as much fun as Ben's time.
Well, let's get you to Dirigo State here in mid-June so you can see the blended program.
Yeah, I'd love to come down to see that because it was a wonderful program. As I would go down on Sunday nights, we'd go up, at that time it was in Husson, and I would go up to Husson and we'd have a hamburger or something in the restaurant and then go in and give our speech in there. So I think it's a great program and it's a great thing. So we got something special coming up here in a bit, the Arch.
We do, as a matter of fact. So I really have to say that it's kind of we initially, we being our Post 28, was asked by the Mount Blue Area Garden Club, who was really the lead over the past year and a half on getting the Teague World War I Memorial Arch, which is located on North Main Street here in Farmington. It actually resides on Franklin County property, and it was inaugurated or unveiled on Memorial Day in 1924. And it was gifted by a Civil War veteran, Mr. Teague. He basically bequeathed his entire estate to have that granite arch built. But what's interesting is that there was no money for the land. So the county, realizing that there's an arch being built but no land for it to sit on, came together and purchased that particular site so that monument could be built. And so now with 2024 coming up, we're basically about a year away now. We would, working together with Franklin County Historical Societies, Mount Blue Area Garden Club, Post 28, and I'll be reaching out to other veteran service organizations like Veterans of Foreign Wars and other posts of AMVETS and other veteran-centric organizations to hopefully what we can do is really have a solemn, respectful celebration, but also a rededication and perhaps an unveiling of this arch, which has been cleaned. Wiles Remembrance Centers has been contracted to clean the arch, and they're going to come back out and do that again. So it looks a lot better. The grounds have been renewed, thankfully, through funds received through ARPA. We sat before the Franklin County Commissioners, told them what our plan was. We received ARPA funding to basically renovate the grounds. And then we are looking to host a public observance on Memorial Day 2024. And I would like to see that we then turn our focus from that to the World War II honor roll at Meeting House Park.
Yes, yeah,
because I believe that memorial needs some renovation, whether it's repointing of the bricks or, we really have to look at that fundamentally, but it's my understanding that that is the town of Farmington's under their purview, and maybe even under the Parks and Recreation Department. So that's kind of where we're looking, is to have that 100th anniversary and then turn our focus to that wall.
And it's interesting because what is it, GAR? Grand Armed Army of the Republic,
yes,
was super active here prior to World War I. I mean, there were pictures in Phillips of them all the Civil War veterans on a hillside taking a picture of them, because we had some of the biggest participants in the Civil War as a state per capita than any other state in the nation. And when they all came home, or that those that did come home, they continued to do that. I had no idea that that's where the memorial funds came from.
Absolutely. So it's my understanding Mr. Teague passed before the unveiling, but there were significant representations from GAR there. Obviously, Post 28, because we were formed in 1919, we have been a part of that initial unveiling, and basically every year thereafter have held public observances for Memorial Day and Veterans Day at that particular site, and then obviously as we become more in modern day times to the memorials at Meeting House Park as well.
That sounds neat. I got some ideas I'll talk to you afterwards about that
I
can help you with.
We appreciate that. It's also, if I may interrupt, we're looking to do a time capsule as well. So we've had that, the vault will be donated. And then we also have a subcommittee of members of local historic societies here in Franklin County, as well as a gentleman, Glenn. I hope you don't mind me talking about you, but he's kind of taken the lead on researching the casualties of World War I and really putting together where it's likely to be a digital presentation as well as a print publication. And I think he has the numbers of around maybe 24 service members throughout Franklin County. And he's going to talk just a little bit about their service and contributions and sacrifices.
Being in the antique business, I went into a house to buy it out, to buy out some of the property. And the owners of the house, they lived on Court Street, found an old box from their family from World War I. and he had 2 stories in it. One was a poem, and I have a copy of the poem, and the other is a story about this guy kept a log when he was over there, and that they were being ready to go across the come out of the trenches and again go out into no man's land and then come back in again. And the guy talks about how many people have been killed the day before, and he said then we got a call to go back to headquarters, and they announced that the war was over. I have those notes.
Oh, wonderful.
So I can share those with you. And I'm trying to remember the family's name that gave them to me. But that was, and they actually had the gas mask that their relative carried, and there was a hole in one side of it. That's where a bullet had gone through, and the gas mask took the bullet instead of the gentleman that was there. So there's some history that'd be phenomenal to do that. Some of the monies that we raise help to fund some of this that's going on, so people know as they go to our fundraisers, it not only supports the Post, but it supports some of these activities.
Oh, absolutely. We really look to, we're a small Post, and having a Legion Hall does cost money, but we are very cognizant of separate, making sure that we are
Right.
partitioning funds. Another fund that we support, we give very small scholarships to students. It's the Alden Mitchell Scholarship. His family bequeathed money to the Post, and we look to supplement to keep that scholarship going. This year we awarded 3 $300 scholarships to local students. So even if it could just help pay for a couple of textbooks, it's very important to us that we are supporting our local community.
So the last question that I have is, various other veterans, this is one of the things that I know has declined. We haven't had veterans come in and join the service. How do they get involved?
So if you're an area veteran, we'd love to have you come to the Post to visit, to talk with us, to meet our membership. I think you're going to find that we're a very diverse and progressive organization in the sense that, for our Post in particular, we're really civic-oriented, civic-minded. We really want to get out and do things within the community to benefit everyone. But we also take time to keep our hall as kind of a place where you can come in if you want to share and talk about your experiences, or you just want fellowship and camaraderie, because there is something I think uniquely special about veterans, because we've all kind of experienced similar things with basic training and all the various trainings, and then our experiences, whether we have a full career and we retired, or like myself, served 6 years in the reserves. But there is always something about our service that we remember, and we can really bond with people we don't even know, but we know that we have our military service as a commonality. So we'd love to have them come in to talk to us. If they want to be a member of the American Legion and of our Post, I can give them information on how to do that. And then for the general community who may be interested in knowing what that building is at 158 High Street is, that's your local American Legion Post. And we would love to have you come in and talk with us. We hold dinners on Friday nights. And if you'd like to be a part of that and meet some of our membership, please just reach out to me. I'd love to have you come as our guest.
Well, thank you. And this is wonderful, and I appreciate that. And we'll put up some phone numbers. Is there a number that somebody can call if they're interested and they see this show?
Yes, absolutely.
We're going to run it right here.
Okay.
Go ahead and give it.
It is 207-200-8756.
Okay.
And that's to reach me. I am the adjutant of Post 28, so I'm kind of responsible for the administration of the
And it'll
Post.
be right there, and it's going to run right there, Drew. Drew,
Perfect.
I appreciate it. So will you come back on as we get closer to 2024 and the Teague Memorial thing?
I would love to return, but I'd probably also like to bring some Garden Club members, and maybe Glenn, if he's available, to talk about this project that's going forth. Because we really hope that once it's complete, we can do community presentations or at select meetings throughout the community.
So, Drew, thank you very much. Thank you for your
Absolutely.
service. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Talkin' Maine.